Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, and career development podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and along with me, as always, is my esteemed colleague, supervisor, educator, mentor, coach, and colleague, Dr. Joe Hamlett. How are you doing today, Dr. Joe?
I'm doing good, but I think you forgot a couple. So, but
Oh
I'll
yeah.
I'll let it slide. No,
Okay,
that's
okay.
okay.
Yeah,
I'll
I'll
let it
look.
slide.
I'll read the list properly next time.
All right.
So, for all of our viewers and listeners who are returning, thank you for joining us on another episode. For those of you who are new, welcome to our show. We hope you enjoy it. We try to have a little bit of fun. Fun is an arbitrary and somewhat subjective word, so we'll probably laugh more than you will. In our usual fashion, or at least giggle or chuckle. In our usual fashion, one of us introduces the other one, then provides some feedback on that, and we just run with it with the topic. So today's topic is, what are you capable of? That's an interesting topic. Joe and I
It
always
absolutely
discuss
is.
these topics offline, and some of them were like, but this one's like, hey, this might be something interesting. So, what are you capable of?
We did you did touch on we did briefly talk about this right before the episode, but what comes to mind now when you say what are you capable of? I immediately think of I don't know for sure yet
Oh, that's
because
interesting.
I think back to before any of my journey,
Mhm,
intentional journey started, which again I've talked about since 2004, is when I kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities.
mhm.
But up until that point, I didn't know that I was capable of anything really. I didn't know I was capable of becoming a doctor, an author, a business owner, adjunct professor, a chief in the military or E9. So I didn't know that I was capable of any of those things. So again, I'll reiterate what I said at the very beginning. I don't know what I'm capable of now because, again, I am still open to the possibilities of where this podcast could take us, where
Right.
anything else we're doing, how much further we can go with that. So again, I thought, well, yeah, now I'm a doctor, I'm all these things, but I'm still like, but what else? What else can I be? Where else can I take this? Where
Mhm.
where else will I land? So I'm now, like I say, I've said this many times. I'm still like a kid in a candy store because it's all new. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
Right, right.
And I still have that same mentality, that same thought process of I could be whatever I want to be, whatever I set my mind to. And again, I've already proven it over and over again that I
Mhm.
can achieve those things. So, like I said, coming into this, I originally thought, yeah, now I know I'm capable of a lot of things, but I still don't. I can't put a label on it because I don't know what I'm capable of. So that's how I'll start it
Wow,
with
that's a
again
great way
still
to start, Joe. I had not even thought of that. I mean,
right,
I was thinking, my thought was, what are you capable of? And when I was in high school, I was like, well, I know I can draw, and I
right,
mentioned that a
yeah,
lot. And I'm like, and I know can do, well, I learned to do DIY, so now I know I'm capable of that. But in high school, I was like, I don't know what I'm capable of, like we had mentioned before, is either you get a job or you go in the military or you go to school.
right,
And it's
yeah,
like, well, school is not really an option for me because I didn't feel I was capable of it at that
right,
time.
yep,
So so I got a couple of jobs and then went in the military, and and even then I wasn't sure if I was capable of being successful in the military because I didn't know. I was very unsure, and I was able to get a lot of self-confidence. Self-confidence doesn't equal uh capability though.
right, right,
So I learned throughout my career that I am capable of doing good things and great things with companies and organizations because like like many troops in the military when you first get in, there's an adjustment period, that waking
right,
up with the alarm clock. Sometimes it doesn't go off. Sometimes you sleep through it. Sometimes your uniform's wrinkly, although I don't think that matters a whole lot anymore. And showing up a few minutes late, 1 minute late, last person to get in line and formation, you're always being called out. So I had some of those little rough patches. And then I had one of my supervisors give me a one of those coming to God speeches, like either straighten up or get out. You need to decide.
right,
And
yep,
and that person coached me on the things I needed to do. So instead of just showing up and being present, I was actually deliberate about what I was doing at work instead of just showing up for work. And then I learned what I was capable of. And when I went to my second base, I got a phenomenal recognition that I'm still very proud of today. It's not handed out like candy or anything like that. It's very difficult to get, and sometimes they don't even give it. So that's at that point is when, and that was in the early 90s. That's when I realized what I was capable of, being that overachiever. And that's what kind of got me through my law enforcement, my military and law enforcement career. And then I started school, and I was very nervous. And I was in the reserves at this point. It was the second time I was in. I took two college classes related to my career field, and I did really well. And I was like, oh, I am capable of going to college. And then I waited for like 3 years and then before I went back. So all these little incremental progressions taught me that I'm capable of doing things to your point exactly. I can do whatever I want now. It's just
Right.
what do I want to do? And that's the thing you have, I didn't realize what I was capable of until I started making setting goals, following the process, being very
Right.
deliberate about my self-reflection and being honest with my brutally honest with myself, like, dude, you are not studying today. You need to study twice as hard tomorrow, and I realized that, when you start those habits become behaviors, and that's when I started realizing I'm capable of things. And then I completed my college degree. Then I was able to get into, some good companies and good positions. And then like you, well, I got my master's, but now what? And I was like, well, the dream, air quotes for those of you who are listening, the dream was, well, if I can do this, I can become a doctor. If I can do this, I can become a doctor. I didn't say I would. I just knew
Right.
I
Right.
thought I could do it. But until I started and actually got into the process of my doctorate degree, and the first year was really rough. It is a exercise in perseverance. Um, and I think we mentioned a couple episodes. My favorite degree was my master's degree. My doctorate degree was work. It was like having two
Right.
extra
Right.
jobs. And the first year, I didn't think I was going to be able to get through it. I didn't think I was capable of, I wanted to get it, but I didn't think I was capable during my first year. And after my first year, once I found my routine, I realized, wow, I can do this. And then I did it. So it's to your point. I don't know. I know I'm capable of anything. I just don't know what I want to do.
Well, you know what, Dave, and so I'll go back a little bit because you did remind me,
Mm.
going into the military, that was a huge um I it showed me that I was capable of certain things. And because when I joined the military, I was a 17-year-old kid. And but again, I didn't know what life was about. I had
Right.
no idea. So for me, becoming a Marine at 17 was huge, but I didn't recognize that what
Right.
I had overcome, and
Hmm.
how I was able to get to that level. And so that's why I still go back to me intentionally,
Right.
working towards things and understanding that I didn't really tie that to any significance,
No,
when I became a
I agree.
Marine. And then even later, I'd already gone through Marine Corps boot camp. Then I later went through Air Force boot camp. And so
And you
again,
and you slept through it because it was like, oh, this
it
is
it
kindergarten.
was different.
I was in I was in the pro league before. This
It,
is just
it was
nursery
a little
school.
different. But again, my point
They
is,
didn't want to offend you, did they?
no, but my point is that the fact that I was capable of things and I was exhibiting it, every day, and accomplishing things, but I wasn't thinking about it. I
Right.
wasn't,
It wasn't a
it
conscious
hadn't
thing.
become, yeah, it hadn't become this thing. You've arrived. You're capable of these things. I hadn't tied that together yet, and that's why I say my intentional journey started in 2004 when I said, I'm going back to school, and then I realized, my education journey. I started to really enjoy that, but then that's when I started looking beyond.
Yeah.
Okay, and I wasn't like you when I was going down this education journey, and I said, oh, I can get my bachelor's, my master's, and one day I'm going to be a doctor. I still had not even thought about the implications of becoming a doctor. I just wanted to continue learning.
Mm,
And that's when I transitioned from earned my master's degree and immediately signing up for my doctorate program. That's all I was doing was just
mm,
that thirst for knowledge. That was what was fueling me. I
mm.
never sat down and said, I one day I dreamed to be a doctor,
Yeah,
or
I didn't
you
hit
know,
that point until I got through my master's, and it was like the last, I don't know, 6 months of my master's degree. The dean came up to me and said, you're doing really well. Have you considered getting a doctorate degree? I'm like, what?
see,
I
again,
just did this.
it really
It
didn't
didn't even
dawn
come
on
across my
me.
mind until that person said that to me.
But again, it still hadn't dawned on me
Mhm.
the path or the journey I was taking was not that I was going to sit at the top of this mountain and
Right,
say I
right,
became
right,
a doctor. It
right.
still was. It still was not connecting with me
Mhm,
that again I was capable of it, or what this was going to mean for me. It
mhm.
still didn't. It really wasn't until probably about that last year or 2 years into that program. The last out of the 5.5 years,
Mhm.
those last 18 months to 2 years, is when I really started to think what it meant and
Yeah.
what I was going to accomplish when I finished that. But up to that point, it still hadn't dawned on me
Mhm.
the significance of what I was capable of, or what I was achieving. And so it's still, that's why, immediately after I graduated, I was on a radio show, and the DJ was like, "Hey, so Dr. Hamlett, when did it sink in that you were going to realize your dream of becoming a doctor?" And I was like, I had to stop him immediately.
Yeah.
And I had to tell him, I never had the dream of becoming a doctor. It wasn't, as a kid, we all have these
Oh,
dreams.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
never,
Yeah,
even
that
in
didn't
my
even cross
early
my
adult
mind.
life or
Yeah.
any of that, it just was not, again, on my radar, my thought process that I could become a doctor. And so that's why I say it just all snuck up on me or crept
Mhm.
up on me
I
to
didn't
start.
realize I was capable of being a doctor till they said, "And here's your diploma, Dr. Peltz." And I'm like,
Well, and that's the reality of it.
yeah,
When my chair said, we I want to be the first to introduce you as Dr. Hamlet, and I just
it didn't.
I mean I
It took a couple
literally,
of days to sink in for me. I was
no,
just
for
like,
me, I screamed to the top of my lungs. I was like, yeah, because I didn't
right.
realize that impact that would have, and again that I was capable of that,
Mhm.
and it was over the top enjoyment for me because it was not a goal. It was not a
It
thing I
wasn't
had
even
in
a
my
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
It just, when it hit me
It just
though, it
kind
was
of
like,
happened.
yeah,
You
but
fell
but
into
when
it.
it did hit me and I realized the significance of it, I almost screamed so loud that I lost my breath because
Wow.
I was just so excited, so and engaged in that moment.
Mhm.
Because again, I up to that point, I really didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I still was just going down that education journey and just not knowing what the end of this was going to look like
Yeah.
until I received that confirmation that I was a doctor, and then it all just flowed into me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's why I say I just, until I became intentional
Yeah, I
about it,
think
and
that's
and
yeah.
then again, because that's when I really started to see, okay, well, then I started to pursue the dream of becoming the senior enlisted position in the military, because I had already lost the opportunity to become an officer because I was already too old. But
Right.
there was still, now I could make it to that highest level on the enlisted side. And so that's when it started to unravel for me, or to reveal itself that I was capable of other things. And then that's when I
Yeah.
started to pursue those things.
Yeah,
So
a couple of the other things I didn't think I was capable of, when I finished my doctorate, I knew I wanted to teach, but
yeah,
I didn't know how to teach college.
right.
I've always been a trainer throughout my career in some aspect or regard or another, either developing, presenting, whatever. But college was different. And the colleges I'd applied for to become an adjunct faculty, I was getting declined. And I was like, oh, wow,
Mm.
maybe I can't do this. And then finally, I got picked up from a school by a school and learned what it took, because it is different than being a student.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You think, well, how come that professor or that instructor isn't doing this?
Yeah.
Well, you're not the only class that they're teaching. You're not the only student in that class either. So, there's a lot more work behind it. And then, when you and I met, you had already published a couple of books, and I had told you I have these ideas for books, but I didn't realize I was capable of it. I had jotted down a couple of outlines, and you know, you pushed me off the cliff and I fell down and I stood up and I was like, oh, that was only a step, not a cliff. And
Right.
now, you know, 5 books later, where I'm an author. I didn't think I was ever capable of doing a podcast. I was like, well, who does that? How do they do that? And here we are, we're podcasters
Right.
for,
Yeah.
in our third season. And it's, these are just, and this is after postdoctorate, it's like
Right.
there's
Right.
still things
Right.
that we don't realize that we're capable of. We
Absolutely.
know we can
Yeah.
do things, but what is it? I've considered going back and getting other doctorate degrees, and it's really just a fleeting thought. It's like, maybe I should get
Yeah.
another
That's
doctorate. No, never
craziness.
mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
That's
it's that quick. So, yeah, it's interesting to think of what you're capable of. And even up until 5 years ago, I had my doctorate, had a good job working for the government, and I needed to get some certifications. Now, I'd never taken any formal, air quotes, formal certifications through outside agencies. It was always internal certifications from the military or companies and that sort of thing.
right. Right.
And I needed to get an OSHA certification. And to be an OSHA authorized trainer, because I don't think they call them
Okay.
instructors. And I was nervous because my team was looking up to me. I had, close to 20 people looking at me saying, wow, okay, let's see, you put your money where your mouth is, doc. Let's
Right.
see what you
Yeah.
got. And I was nervous through that thing. I'm like, I knew some of the safety stuff, I was familiar with it, but Joe, I tell you, I was sweating throughout that certification, and I
Right.
was nervous. I'm like, if I don't pass, that's going to look really bad, and if I
Right.
don't do at least decent, that's not going to look very good either. And so, not thinking I was capable of getting an industry recognized certification, I didn't think I was capable of that. I was
Right.
nervous about it. So, it's not that we're not capable. It's we need to realize that we're capable and be deliberate about being capable. It's one thing to think and dream, which is, when I was going through college, oh, I'm going to get my master's degree. Oh, I'll get my doctorate degree. It was more of a dream. If I do it, that's
Right.
great. If not, I'm content where I'm at. And so, there's just so many different facets of our journeys that we think about. I never, I shouldn't say I never, um, but playing golf. Not that I was ever pro or remotely close to it. I
Right.
probably broke more windshields in the parking lot because of my bad slice. But, I learned I didn't think I was capable of hitting a little ball with a stick with a little, piece of paper on the end, like a post-it note, the size of a post-it note, and it's like, but I learned how to do that. I'm capable of doing that. So when we bring up the question to our audience, what are you capable of? The sky's the limit, really. I mean, you're
Right.
capable of doing anything you want. It's just whether you decide to or not. I could go on to get a medical degree. I'm capable of doing that. I don't want to put in that effort to spend another
Right.
4 to 6 years to change my trajectory to do something like that. I think it would be cool, but I just don't have the drive to do that. My drive is to do other things that I'm capable of. And that's what we
Well,
want the audience to think about is what are you capable of that you've been fearful of or hesitant about, or you've put on the back burner for whatever reasons? What are you capable of, and then why are you not doing that which you're capable of?
I will just in my own experience, part of me not reaching my potential was the fact that I didn't have any support. I didn't have
Mm.
anybody, there was a cheerleader for me to, and I didn't have any examples. So when you're facing that you don't have any examples, you don't have any support, you're all alone. I mean, and that,
Right.
so and you kind of mentioned it when you said you're going after certifications and you've got these 20 people looking at you and basically putting you on the spot. And I think that's some of the fear we all have
Mhm.
with, how many people are watching me. I mean, how many people is this going to impact, or what are people going to say about me if I don't succeed? So I think
Mhm.
that was um, holding me back in a lot of ways. So perfect example was, as a kid, and I've talked about this before, at that time my dream was to become, the next Dr. J, because
And you
I
did,
thought
Joe. You did. You did a
I
fantastic
did,
job. It's
which
just in a different area.
right, and that's what's funny about that whole story is, again, my uncle called me Dr. J, just because that's who I thought I was going to be on the court.
Hmm.
Now I'm Dr. J, but outside the court. But my point is, back then I didn't believe I was capable of going beyond, even high school. So I allow someone else's perception, someone else's
Hmm.
opinion of me stop me. And it was
Their
someone I
influence.
respected.
Yeah.
Yeah, their influence changed the trajectory of my life, because at
Hmm.
that time I didn't believe I was capable of doing it. I didn't realize I had the skills. It wasn't until later, 5, 6 years later, when I was just playing pickup ball, and I realized I was good. People were telling me, did you ever play any pro ball or anything like that?
You
Because
should have
my
said, "Yeah, I'm
skills were
Dr. J."
and that would have been a flat out lie,
Well,
because at that time people could see Dr. J, and,
yeah.
I wasn't Dr. J. But my point is that it wasn't until later that I received that acknowledgement, that validation, that I
Mm,
could have been good enough if I would have continued to practice and train,
mm.
and not allow someone else to dictate what I was capable of.
It's
And
funny that
that's
you
a
say that, Joe, because, my love in high school was art. And I still
right,
enjoy drawing and working with different mediums. And it was always my dream to have an art business. And I did for a short period of time. And there was a point in my career where I needed to decide, am I going to, it was after I got my bachelor's degree, am I going to open my own business and focus on my art business and focus on art? Or am I going to go and pursue a master's degree and go into corporate America? And that weighed heavily on me probably the last year of my of my bachelor's degree, because I knew I finally had the opportunity to do what I wanted. But to your point, it wasn't an individual necessarily. It was just more the industry pressure, or
right,
the perception of industry, and that's what was considered successful. You go to
right,
corporate
right. Yep,
America,
yep,
and you follow that path and you climb the corporate ladder.
yep.
And sometimes I think back, like you were just saying, if I just would have stuck with that, where would I be? And I know I'd
Right,
be in a completely different place
right,
in so many levels, but I'd also be in a different place on so many levels there. So, it's just that was a pivot point for me to say, well, I'm capable of it, but I wanted to see if I what how much more I was capable of. And
right,
that's what was driving me, kind of like when you were mentioning your that just that draw to just absorb more knowledge.
right,
That's kind of what I experienced. It's like I want to see what I'm really truly capable of, because I didn't think I was capable of getting a bachelor's degree until I got that piece of paper, you know, and I wanted to see what I was truly capable of. How far could I push myself? In the military, they teach you to push yourself beyond
right,
your
right.
limits, beyond what
Yep,
you mentally think you're capable of, physically think you're capable of. And I finally had an opportunity to explore that. And that's why I did what I did. So when we talk about um, when we talk about asking the audience what are they capable of, you know, you do need to sit down and do a lot of critical self-reflection. You have to be deliberate about it. You have to be, again, of that brutal honesty with yourself. You know, if you think that you can't do it, why can't you? What do you need to do to overcome those I
right, right,
cannots? What are you doing to ignore all the noise, all the social noise saying why you can't do things, why you shouldn't do things? There's a lot of things out there on social media. Oh, well, this industry is going down. These jobs are going down. These jobs are going up. Well, if they all went down, then they would go back up because there's a need for them, right? They just don't
Right.
disappear. They might morph or transform, but there's always going to be needs for for individuals with those skill sets, and we're seeing that again, especially over the last 5 years in the trades. The trades were a great job in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and then they started taking a decline. And now in the trades, you can make as much in the trades as you can with a bachelor's or master's degree. So
Right.
what are you capable of really? um, it's a deep question to ask, because you really have to be, again, honest with yourself to think about, why am I not doing the things I want to do? Why am I not doing and pursuing the things I'm interested in? Is it because someone's telling me not, I can't, or I won't? Do I not have the support, like you had mentioned? Is
Right.
it
Right.
industry expectations? Is it social expectations? I mean, what is preventing you from doing that which you want to do, to see if you're capable of it? So I'm
Yeah.
going to pause there. We've got about 3 to 5 minutes left, I think. So I'm just kind of winding us down, getting us geared towards that. So what are some of your final thoughts on uh, what are you capable of, or what are people capable of?
So I mean, I'll start with what I started with, or I'll go back to what I started with, and that is, again, we really don't know what we're capable of until we, like you said, we become intentional about it. We really consider, what will it take for me to get there, and
Love it,
and
love it.
you also said, you know shutting out that noise, and a lot of that is those detractors, people telling you you can't do it, or not having an example of it, because you might be blazing your own trail when it comes to that
Hmm.
success. And I think that's what happened to me is, no one in my family has done any of the things that I've done. So, or close friends. So everything I've done, it's been me. I mean, my
Hmm.
family supported me, but I'm saying it wasn't, um, you know, people suggesting, people handing me things, people, it was me figuring out I am capable of these things. If
Hmm.
I commit to this, if I, continue to work at it, stay consistent, then I can achieve these things. So if you still are hung up on what you're potentially capable of, Dave said it earlier, really sit down and think about what it is you want.
Hmm.
And then again, that's really devising a plan of where you want to go, evaluating where you are today, and then again, figuring out how to get there. And that's really what it comes down to is devising a plan that's going to help you get there. Because if you can dream it, you can see it, you can visualize it, then you're capable of doing those things.
Hmm.
So I'll end with that.
That's great, Joe. The only thing I'm going to add on there is, don't let that voice inside your head tell you you can't do anything and start buying into that. Or
Right.
don't believe others when they tell you you can't do things. Joe and I know people that have physical and cognitive limitations, and they are doing amazing, phenomenal things. I mean, it just amazing things, and if you start thinking about perspective, well, the job I have, I hate. Well, someone wants that job. Well, I wish I
Right.
had that
Yep.
airplane. Well, someone wishes they had that car. You know, put things into perspective and stop doubting yourself and stop listening to all that noise, that negativity, and just start believing in yourself. Don't tell yourself you're not capable of it. Reprogram your mind. So,
Right. Yep.
with that, we'd like to thank all of our viewers and listeners for joining us for another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, and career development podcast. And if you like what you saw, enjoyed what you saw or heard, share it. Please like, share, follow. The links are right here. And reach out to us. We love the feedback that we receive. We love the ideas that we're receiving for different topics. And yeah, thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to doing this again soon. So with that, we'd like to tell you to keep on being your not so ordinary you.